Hello, everyone. My name is Carolina Marca. I work at the Organization of American States. And today I'll be hosting this meeting on engagement in a hybrid world. This is the first of two meetings that we plan to have related to different work modalities. Um, in this first one, we're going to focus on uh, engagement, but in the second one, we're going to focus on impacts and emissions related to different work modalities as in-person, hybrid, or remote. I want to have like some time for our next guest, that is the clean conferencing team. We have Sue Allen that will be presenting on reducing carbon footprints through virtual event design. So I think this will be really helpful for a lot of organizations, and I'm really eager to hear from you, Sue.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. It's lovely to be here and fascinating to hear everyone's engagement activities. So I'm going to share my screen. Uh, so I'm Sue Allen. I work with Josh Gutwell at the Clean Conferencing Institute. And just to say very briefly what we do is that we are trying to reduce conference travel, just as we've been hearing about. The reason we focus on conferences is that I think 85 million conference trips a year are taken just in the US. It's a vast amount of travel, and so we focus on the conferencing in particular. But the kinds of things we're learning, I think, can apply to all kinds of virtual gatherings and gatherings of all kinds, especially for international folks who have a broad reach in any case. And our goal is to try to make virtual conferencing so good that nobody wants to travel anymore. That's kind of our fantasy. And so we partner with associations who are interested in learning how to make their virtual meetings, gatherings of all sizes and scope more engaging. So I hope that some of this might intersect with some of you, even though it's not exactly the same thing as the previous speakers had been talking about. So one of our partners is in the museum field, the Visitor Studies Association, and they have a green team that does two things. One of them is that when they have in-person conferences, they have green actions that are recorded on a tracker, which I'll show you very briefly. And the other thing that they do is they really invest in virtual conferencing, and they have now committed to alternating every year between in-person and virtual, and that seems to be working very well. And I will just say that the evaluations are showing that satisfaction is comparable now because we've done so much work in trying to make the virtual conferencing better, and also, of course, attendance is much more because the virtual is much more accessible. So just to show you the first encouraging green actions, this is the tracker that we have. It's just a simple tracker that's been created that encourages people to make pledges while they're at a conference. What are the kinds of things they are going to do? And at the end of the conference, we give them the feedback on the amount of carbon we've saved through these kinds of pledges. They go from very small things, refilling your bottle instead of using plastic water bottles, to carbon offsets. And one of the things we learned was even though we made a lot of effort to make sure that the carbon offsets were legitimate and local and very solid, they were not very much embraced by people. So that was a bit disappointing. Anyway, and so then we tell people exactly what they've achieved during the conference and give them some numbers and come up with the total carbon emissions that were saved in various years. So I just wanted to point to that. We've had some interest in that from other folks, and I can always, share that with you. Happy to pass it on if it's helpful. But I wanted to spend most of my time just talking about the virtual conferencing aspect. And as I said, hopefully some of this is going to be useful. Anytime you have folks that have virtual gatherings or especially networking events where people come together to collaborate and learn from each other, we've really learned a lot about how to do that. We characterize events as sort of being these two kinds, static versus dynamic. It's just a shorthand for the kinds of things where are you expecting folks to sit and listen mostly in an event, or are you expecting them to have a lot more agency and walk around and talk to each other and be engaged in an informal social networky way? And if you think about the pandemic and all the kinds of things that we've done in the past and typical webinars and so on, it tends to be very static. We're good at static. We're good at imparting information virtually. What we're not good at is these dynamic, informal networking things. And that's what people value so much when they go to conferences or international meetings or national meetings. They want to have opportunities to have serendipitous conversations with folks outside of sessions. So that's where all of our energy is focused on those dynamic sessions. And I think no matter what your goal is, if you're looking to build community, most people are looking to build quick community in these kinds of settings in one way or another with the association or with the topic at hand, or if it's a green action focus, building community is absolutely key. So the kinds of principles that we have learned are not just lecturing at people about whatever it is that you want them to know, really supporting informal networking, and supporting meaningful conversations around content. We're very good at just pushing information at people, but are we able to support them to have conversations in small groups about what they've just heard, especially if it's inspiring? And lastly, just that sense of belonging that we're trying to expand to welcome folks into our circle that are bigger than we normally talk to, not the usual suspects, but how to embrace a larger community. And very much it's about humanizing the experience. So one example I wanted to give you, this was just something so this is something we've been working with the California Association of Museums on. We call it an after mingle. The idea is just that after you have presentations at any kind of meeting, often people hang out at the end and just kind of talk to each other and process personally what they got out of that last session. When you go virtual, typically all of that is lost. People just say, thanks for the session, goodbye, and everybody leaves. And so we've tried to really, and sometimes people do hang on afterwards, but we've tried to really formalize that and call it an after mingle and point out that it's actually a really valuable time to meet other folks and do some critically important networking. And so we will put that as part of the time. We make sure that there's time for an after mingle in whatever event is happening. So here's the example of the California Association of Museums After Mingle. They did it just using Zoom, so they had no fancy platforms. You can totally do it using Zoom. The main point is that the main room stays open for chat with peers, unstructured chat where people can just share what they want to. And then we also created additional breakout rooms, and we've used two in this last one that we just did last week. So we had panelists who had just given fascinating presentations to the membership, and they were in one breakout room. So if you wanted to talk to the panelists, it's sort of akin to the people queuing up at the end of a talk in person. We made that space in a breakout room, and they were just happy to chat to people about answer questions or talk to people about work they'd been doing in related areas. That group. And then we had a third group, which was a breakout dedicated to the sponsor. And the sponsor was sponsors and exhibitors are critically important in conferences, in many conferences, because they often provide the economic support that makes the whole thing happen. And we have been experimenting with models where the sponsor or exhibitor comes in and has their own breakout room, and they participate a little bit in the discussion, enough to tantalize the audience that there is some wisdom here. And also they have specific things, offers of services to offer. And so in this case, Nick Honeyset is a consultant for museums, and he was able to meet afterwards. So this is a shot from his after mingle. There was only one person who came to his breakout, but afterwards he said, well, actually, they were both thrilled to bits to have time to spend with each other and felt like it was incredibly valuable. So I think to remember that sometimes this relationship building, which is now the currency of exhibitors and a lot of consultants, relationships are terribly important. How to meet the right people that want to be in relationship with you is a really big issue. And so even though this was only a one-on-one, both of them were thrilled. And the exhibitor said, the sponsor, that he thought this was the best part of the whole event was the after mingle. And Tina wrote back to us and said, thank you, thank you, thank you. I've never had such a wonderful opportunity to talk to somebody who could help me so much. So that was an example of an after mingle. We've also done them with the Visitor Studies Association after mingles, where we do them in a structured way. So instead of just letting people sort of mill around in interest groups after a presentation, we have provide put them into breakouts and provided them with discussion prompts that they can consider. Again, the focus is just to get them to think about the content that they just heard and process it with each other and personalize it and make it meaningful. Okay, then I also wanted to just encourage folks to consider different platforms. I know we use Zoom and Teams and so on a lot, and I love Zoom, and this has all kinds of wonderful features. But just to say there are some other platforms, and I just wanted to flash a few before you in case you haven't seen them yet. There are a bunch of spatial platforms now that support networking. So one that we particularly like that I've shown here is called Spatial Chat. It's not very expensive, and it's basically it's like Zoom in that you have a video and an audio stream, and you can talk with people. But the difference is that you can move yourself around a space, and the background of the space can be designed in any way. And the powerful thing, see that big red circle there going by? I've just got this on repeat mode, so you'll see it again in a moment. Is your audio radius. In other words, how big are your ears? So when you get close to people, they become big and you can hear them. And when you're far away from people, they become small and you can't hear them. And that simulates the quality of being like in a coffee chat with people or mingling in any kind of situation where you don't want to hear everyone at once. It makes it feel just radically different as a mingling and networking experience. So there are the people actually in a cloud when we ask them to pick a discussion topic, and you can see you can quite and then you can actually zoom in even further, but you can see that you can see the people well and hear them well, but you can't hear the other folks at the other side of the room. So we used this. This was last week's Visitor Studies Association conference, which was fully virtual. Here's an example of us using spatial chat for one of our networking events. Is we asked them to pick a discussion topic, and so you could be in one of the clouds. Actually, this one called "What are some green actions you'd like to see?" was not one of the topics. I just changed the edits to suggest to you that you could certainly add whatever topic you wanted. And then on the right, we had open mingling, always making space for people to just chat to each other because there's an enormous longing people have to talk to each other, and you want to legitimize that, no matter how the size and scale of your event. And then in the middle, we have norms for mingling, and that's another point I'll get to in a moment. Just to say, it's important for people to know the norms of a virtual space because those are much less clear than in-person conferences. Some of the stuff is even hard in person, but particularly in virtual, people want to be respectful and they don't know how. So providing norms in any space is a very helpful thing to do. So here's an example of the networking event. I'll turn it off, but you can see there were people adjusting their audio radius so that they could hear more or less of each other. And there was a lot of open mingling going on. And then there were people chatting. And you can see actually I'm streaming Josh's experience. He's the person here. And I know it's Josh's experience because all the people around him are big. And I'm somewhere off. I'm one of these other little dots and I'm small, so I can't hear him or see him at that point. Let's see, networking event. Okay, so I'm going to stop. Also, you can use these spatial platforms for zones of activity. Sometimes people like to work individually in a quiet place, and you legitimize that by giving them a place to do it where they won't be bothered. Others like to work in small groups, and by creating those different spaces with the different norms, you can support all kinds of working styles. Poster sessions, maybe I won't say a lot about this, just to say, I don't know if you guys even do poster sessions, but it's a great way to do in spatial settings because then again, people can visit with a presenter and see a poster and then move on and talk amongst themselves. So that's been a place we've done a lot of work. So social norms I mentioned, just to be really aware of the kinds of things people want to know and answering those for them so that they can feel safe. People feel very shy in a virtual space. They don't want to bother others and they aren't sure how to do it. Even though they're longing to talk, they're not quite sure how. So there are actually lots of needs for social norms in different situations, which we often don't even think about. I'm getting towards the end here. I know we're 1 minute, so I guess, well, I don't know what I do now. Do I just stop? Committee's Corner, just to say, recruiting green, well, maybe I'll just keep going, actually. Just to say there's three legs of our stool for designing dynamic virtual events. Think about the platform, think about the activities, and think about the social norms. And together, those really help people um, to feel satisfied and engaged. And then some of the lessons that virtual event planning is not a quick thing, which a lot of people seem to think it is. It takes at least as much time as an in-person. And I really think having more staffing, because you always have tech support issues, you always have hosting needs, facilitation needs, and so on. Um, Small groups are fantastic, but they need skilled facilitation, which is another whole subject, and enough structure that people can feel safe. And innovative platforms can be powerful, but there's a whole strand of work around how to provide enough training that people feel comfortable using them. So anyway, thank you for listening, and that's the end of me. Sorry that I'm right on the hour, but that's I'll hand off now.
Thank you so much, Sue. That was great. It was great to hear like all of these new ideas that in my case I haven't thought before. And like with the topic that you mentioned, like after mingle, I know like we are over the time, but I wanted to ask people if you have some extra minutes, we can do kind of like a after mingle thing right now and stay a bit. So if people have questions for Sue, if you can stay, Sue, a little bit, or
Sure.
any other people that can stay, we can continue to chat and talk about this. Thank you so much.